It was one of those cool September evenings in Seattle when the rain seemed to whisper against the windows, soft and endless. Amelia Brooks stood in her kitchen staring blankly at the half-cooked dinner on the stove. The clock ticked louder than usual. Her husband Mark had just texted, "Working late again. Don't wait up." She put her phone down, forcing a small smile that disappeared as quickly as it came. That message had become routine so common that even disappointment felt dull now. The house was silent, too silent, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip of rain outside. She looked around the home she and Mark had built over 20 years of marriage. Everything was perfect on the surface, nice furniture, framed photos. A life people would envy, but beneath it all, something was missing. There was love once, laughter, late-night talks that stretched until sunrise. But now, they barely spoke about anything beyond bills, errands, and obligations. Their connection had faded into politeness. Amelia didn't even know when that had happened. Only that one day she woke up and realized she felt invisible. Her phone buzzed again. It's time a call from Nora, her oldest friend. "You're not staying home again, are you?" Nora's cheerful voice filled the kitchen. Amelia tried to sound amused. "I'm making dinner." Nora laughed. "You're making loneliness. Come out tonight. There's a charity event downtown. Live jazz, good food, normal human interaction. You need it." Amelia hesitated, glancing at the rain outside. "It's raining, Nora. Seattle." "Amelia, it's always raining. Come on, please. You used to love music. You used to love everything." Something in that sentence stung her. Used to love. Nora didn't mean it cruelly, but it hit a truth Amelia couldn't deny. She hadn't loved much of anything lately. Not even herself. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to go for an hour. Maybe she just needed to remember what it felt like to exist beyond the walls of her quiet house. She got ready slowly. Her reflection in the mirror startled her tired eyes. Faint lines around her mouth, but still traces of the woman she once was. She put on a simple navy dress, tied her hair back, and drove downtown through streets glistening with rain. The venue was warm and alive. Soft yellow lights glowed against wooden walls, and the low hum of conversation mixed with the smooth voice of a jazz singer. Amelia stood near the bar, feeling awkward at first, like she had stepped into someone else's world. She ordered sparkling water and watched couples sway gently to the rhythm. There was something soothing about the music hit wrapped around her like a memory of who she used to be. Then she noticed him. He was standing near the far side of the room, talking to the event photographer. Tall, dark hair, slightly tousled, eyes sharp but kind. He looked out of place to not part of a couple, not trying to impress anyone, just present. Their eyes met for a brief second, and he smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile meant to charm, but one that carried quiet understanding. Amelia looked away, embarrassed, and focused on her drink. The next song began a slow, soulful tune that made the air feel heavier. A few couples drifted onto the dance floor. Amelia turned slightly, pretending to watch the band, when she heard a low voice beside her. "Do you dance?" She looked up. It was him. He was closer now, his tone calm, polite. She almost laughed. "Not anymore," she said softly. He smiled, tilting his head slightly. "Then maybe it's time you did again." Before she could protest, he extended his hand. There was something steady and reassuring about his presence. Without quite understanding why, she placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, his grip gentle but firm. He led her toward the dance floor, and the world around her seemed to fade into soft lights and music. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. His hand rested respectfully at her back, guiding her with quiet confidence. Amelia followed his movements easily, as if she'd known the rhythm all along. The song's slow melody wrapped around them, and she felt something she hadn't in years, a sense of being seen, of being known without explanation. When the music stopped, she realized she had been holding her breath. Her cheeks flushed slightly as they stepped back from each other. "You're good," she said, half laughing, half trying to hide how flustered she felt. "So are you," he replied. "I'm Daniel, Amelia." He nodded, as if he already knew. Nice to meet you, Amelia. They stood near the edge of the floor and began talking at first about simple things. The band, the event, how he ended up there. He told her he was a photographer working freelance and had been covering events like this one for years. He spoke with ease, his voice low and grounded. Amelia found herself laughing, even sharing stories she hadn't thought about in years. How she used to take dance classes in college. How she and Mark once traveled across the coast before life got busy. Daniel listened, not with polite nods, but with genuine attention. It had been so long since someone looked at her like that with curiosity, not obligation. When Nora came over, slightly tipsy and ready to leave, Amelia turned to say goodbye to Daniel, but he was gone. She scanned the room once, disappointed, though she didn't understand why. Driving home, the rain was heavier, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and white. She turned off the radio and thought about the way Daniel had moved, the calm assurance in his voice, the quiet in his eyes. It wasn't attraction exactly, it was awakening. A reminder that something inside her still existed, still wanted to feel connected, still wanted to be alive at home. The house was dark. Mark wasn't tea-back. She ate a few bites of cold pasta, then sat on the couch, replaying the dance over and over in her mind. She could almost still feel his hand guiding hers, the unspoken rhythm between them. It wasn't what he said that stayed with her, was what he didn't say. The silence had spoken louder than any words could. Lying in bed that night, she listened to the sound of rain on the roof. It had been a simple evening, just a dance, just a stranger, but something about it unsettled her. It wasn't about Daniel. It was about herself. About the part of her that she'd long ignored, buried beneath years of responsibility and distance. For the first time in a long while, she felt awake. It wasn't happiness exactly, but something close, a pulse. A whisper that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't finished yet. The next morning, she caught herself glancing at her phone, though she knew she had no reason to expect a message. She laughed at the thought. Still, she couldn't help it. The memory of his steady hand and calm voice lingered at work. Everything felt oddly sharper, the colors, the sounds, even her reflection in the window. She noticed she was standing straighter, smiling more easily. Something had shifted inside her, and yet underneath the small spark of newness, there was guilt. She had done nothing wrong. But she knew what she was feeling was dangerous, the beginning of something she couldn't quite name. That evening, as Mark sat across from her at dinner scrolling through his phone, Amelia studied his face. They had built a life together, a history, memories. But somewhere along the way, they had stopped holding each other the way they used to. She wanted to tell him about the fundraiser, about dancing, about how it made her feel alive again. But when she opened her mouth, the words disappeared. Instead, she said quietly, "You're working a lot lately." He didn't look up. "You know how it is. Deadlines never end." She nodded. "Yeah, I know." That night, she lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. The rain had stopped, but its rhythm still echoed in her mind. She thought of Daniel not as a man she wanted, but as a reminder of something deeper. Something had started with that silent dance, something she couldn't undo, and she didn't know yet where it would lead. The next few days passed in quiet routine, but something in Amelia Brooks had changed. She couldn't explain it, not to herself, not to anyone, but after that night the world felt sharper. She noticed small things again, like the smell of rain on pavement, the sound of wind brushing through trees, the way music in her car could lift her mood. It wasn't Daniel she kept thinking of exactly, it was what he had stirred inside her. That single dance had woken something she thought was gone. Mark didn't notice the shift in her, or maybe he didn't want to. Their lives ran on parallel tracks. Now work, dinner, sleep, repeat. One evening, he mentioned another business trip, leaving before dawn and returning late Sunday. Amelia smiled politely and wished him a safe trip. But as soon as the door closed behind him, the silence filled the house again, thick and familiar. The next morning, while cleaning the kitchen, Amelia found a flyer on the counter, one from the same fundraiser she'd attended. She remembered the warmth of the music, the flicker of lights, and suddenly she wanted that feeling again. Without thinking, she searched online for local art or community events, hoping for something similar. She found a small gallery exhibition featuring local photographers. Her heart quickened when she saw a familiar name on the list, Daniel Cole. She almost laughed at the coincidence. Or maybe it wasn't one. Maybe the world was nudging her toward something she needed to face. She hesitated for a long while before finally deciding to go. The gallery was tucked into a quiet street, its walls lined with soft light and framed photos that captured life in fleeting moments, people laughing in the rain, a child watching snowfall, a woman dancing alone in a kitchen. Each image felt deeply human. And then she saw his name again, below a photograph of two hands almost touching, fingers brushing but not quite holding. The title read, Almost. Amelia stood there longer than she meant to. That photo captured something she couldn't name, a quiet ache. A longing that wasn't desperate but deeply familiar. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said behind her. She turned and saw him, Daniel, smiling faintly, camera strap hanging loosely around his shoulder. He looked different in daylight, calmer. Yet his eyes carried that same quiet warmth she remembered. I wasn't sure I'd see you again, he said to Amelia. Managed a nervous smile. I wasn't sure either. I didn't know you were showing your work here. He shrugged modestly. It's small, but I like capturing moments that feel real. Not perfect, just true. They walked together through the gallery, talking softly. There was no pretense between them, no small talk about work or the weather. They spoke about art, life, the little things people stop noticing when they get too busy surviving. Amelia told him about her love for dancing, how she hadn't danced since that night. Daniel told her about traveling alone, capturing photos of strangers because he found honesty in their eyes. When the crowd thinned, they found themselves near the window, rain streaking the glass again. Daniel looked at her, not with intent, but understanding. You looked lighter that night, he said quietly. When you danced, Amelia glanced down. I used to feel like that a lot. Now I just feel numb most days. You're not numb, he said gently. You're just waiting for something real. His words hit her deeper than she expected. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't. They stood there for a while just watching the rain. There was no rush, no expectation, just silence that somehow felt full. Before leaving, he said, There's another event next week. Outdoor music, nothing fancy. You should come. Bring a camera, maybe dance again. She hesitated but nodded. Maybe I will. That night, she drove home through the city lights, feeling both calm and conflicted. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet guilt tugged at her heart. It wasn't about Daniel, it was about what his presence made her realize, how empty her marriage had become, how starved she was for connection, for warmth, for being seen. Mark came home 2 days later, exhausted and distracted. Over dinner, Amelia tried to share about the art show, about how she'd gone alone and met the photographer from before. Mark listened half-heartedly, nodding between bites. That's nice, he said. You're finding hobbies again. It was meant as encouragement, but it felt like distance. She wanted him to ask more too, wonder what the photos meant to her, what the night felt like. But he didn't. He was already scrolling through emails before the dishes were cleared. That weekend, Amelia found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at her old camera. She hadn't used it in years. She dusted it off and charged the battery, unsure why she was doing it. Maybe she just wanted to see life differently again, capture moments that reminded her she was still here. When the next weekend came, she went to the music event Daniel had mentioned. It was held in a small park under strings of warm lights, people scattered on benches and picnic blankets. The sound of soft guitar filled the evening air. She saw him near the stage, camera in hand, snapping photos of the crowd. When he noticed her, his expression softened into a quiet smile. You came. I brought the camera, she said, holding it up. He laughed lightly. Then let's see if you still remember how to use it. They spent the evening taking pictures of strangers laughing, kids running, the glow of lights reflecting off puddles. Daniel guided her through angles and settings, but mostly he let her explore. There was an unspoken ease between them, a rhythm that didn't need defining. As the music grew slower, Daniel lowered his camera. "Do you want to dance?" Amelia hesitated, looking at the people swaying nearby. "Here, why not?" So she did. This time it wasn't like the first. There was no surprise, no hesitation. The world felt softer, quieter, as if time had slowed down just for them. His hand guided hers not forcefully, but with a certainty that said, "You're safe here." They didn't speak. The moment didn't need words. It was two people finding something human in a world that had forgotten how to feel. When the music ended, Amelia stepped back, catching her breath. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't say anything suggestive. He only smiled gently and said, "You look alive again." That night, she lay in bed, unable to sleep. She kept replaying the evening, the laughter, the photographs, the dance. It wasn't love, she told herself. It wasn't betrayal either. It was a mirror showing her what she'd lost, what she still needed to find. But deep down, she knew something was changing. She was crossing an invisible line not through actions, but emotions. And that, in its own quiet way, felt even more dangerous the next morning. She opened her photo gallery and looked through the pictures. One stood out, a shot Daniel had taken of her when she wasn't looking. Her face turned toward the light, eyes soft, a small smile playing at her lips. She looked. When Mark came downstairs, she showed him the photo, hoping he'd see her. Really see her? He barely glanced before saying, "That's nice. You should print it." Then he left for work. Something in her broke, then not out of anger, but realization. She had been trying to find pieces of herself in a life that no longer reflected who she was. And Daniel. He had simply reminded her that she still existed. Days turned into weeks. They saw each other occasionally at galleries, coffee shops, brief exchanges that felt effortless. Their connection deepened, though neither said what they both knew. Amelia wasn't searching for an affair. She was searching for herself. But sometimes in finding yourself, you stumble into someone else who mirrors what you've been missing. Still, she kept her distance, careful not to cross lines. Yet each time their eyes met, the air between them felt heavier, filled with everything unspoken. And as much as she tried to deny it, she could feel the pungent, quiet, impossible to ignore. It wasn't love yet, but it was something that could become love if she wasn't careful. And she didn't know if she was ready to stop it. Autumn deepened in Seattle, painting streets with amber leaves and misty evenings. Amelia Brooks walked through the park that had hosted the small music event weeks earlier, her camera hanging loosely around her neck. The crisp air carried both a chill and a sense of clarity, as if the city itself encouraged reflection. She paused to frame a photo of a couple laughing on a bench, the light catching their faces perfectly. As she looked through the viewfinder, she realized how much she had changed since that first night with Daniel. She noticed details, again tiny gestures, unspoken moments. Life happening in quiet fragments. Daniel had been in her thoughts constantly. But he wasn't a temptation the way she had feared. He was a mirror, showing her what she had been missing in her own life, what had been absent in her marriage. He had reminded her that she could still feel, that she could still be alive and present. And she wanted that life, not just fleeting moments, but everyday presence, connection, and honesty. That evening, Amelia returned home to find Mark sitting at the kitchen table, exhausted but present. They had drifted into routines where conversations were minimal. And she realized how much she had longed for a meaningful connection with him. Over the last weeks, she had begun noticing his little efforts, the way he poured coffee just right, how he adjusted the thermostat before she mentioned the cold, the quiet humor he tried to share at the dinner table. They had both been surviving, but survival was not enough. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied, looking up from his laptop. For a moment, there was a pause, the kind that carries the weight of unspoken truths. She swallowed, realizing that she had to speak. Not about Daniel, not about anything outside, but about herself and what she wanted from them together. "Mark," she began, "I've been Distant, I know that. I've been feeling lost, I guess. I didn't even know how much until recently. He closed the laptop and looked at her, genuinely present for the first time in months. I've noticed, he said quietly. I know I've been distant too. Work, stress. I'm sorry. She nodded, a wave of relief mixing with guilt. I think we need to start noticing each other again. Not just routines, not just life passing by. I want us to be awake together. Mark reached across the table, taking her hand. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, but it was grounding, real. I want that too, he said, the next week. Amelia dedicated herself to rebuilding the connection she and Mark had allowed to drift away. She cooked with him again, letting small jokes and laughter fill the kitchen. They took evening walks, noticing the city's beauty in ways they hadn't since they had first met. She told him about her renewed interest in photography, and he encouraged her, even suggesting they take a weekend trip to capture the changing leaves in the countryside. During this time, Daniel remained a gentle presence in her thoughts, a reminder of the spark she had almost forgotten. They exchanged a few emails about photography tips and community exhibits. But she kept her interactions professional and distant. His role in her life had shifted from a catalyst of excitement to a mirror reflecting her own desires and feelings. She had learned to separate fleeting fascination from what mattered most, her commitment, her love, and her growth. One Saturday, Amelia and Mark drove to a quiet lake a few hours from the city. The drive was filled with casual chatter, laughter, and even shared silence, comfortable and familiar. At the lake, Amelia raised her camera, capturing moments of Mark skipping stones, the sunlight hitting his face, the reflection of trees in the water. She realized how long it had been since she had truly appreciated him, the man she had chosen, the life they had built together. Mark noticed her gaze. You're really seeing this place, he said. I haven't seen you like this in a while. She smiled softly. I'm seeing you too, she admitted. They walked along the shoreline, hand in hand, letting words come and go with ease. Amelia understood that love wasn't about sparks or constant excitement. It was about presence, attention, and choice. They talked about what had changed, what they wanted, and how they could maintain connection despite life's inevitable challenges. For the first time in months, she felt aligned with him emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Meanwhile, Daniel's role in her life had quietly closed its chapter. She thought of him not with longing, but with gratitude. He had reminded her of her own vitality, her capacity to feel, and her right to desire fulfillment. He had been a catalyst, yes, but Amelia realized that the life she wanted could not exist outside of her own choices. She could not rely on him more than anyone else to awaken her spirit. She had to take responsibility for her happiness and her relationships. Over the following months, Amelia and Mark continued rebuilding their life. They established small rituals, weekly walks, shared photography projects, even occasional dance nights in their living room. They laughed more easily, talked more openly, and began trusting again. Amelia found herself falling in love with Mark all over, not as a routine, but as a conscious choice every day. One evening, Amelia sat in her studio, looking at the photos she had taken over the past few months. One image stood at a photograph of Mark mid-laugh, the sunlight catching his hair. She smiled and realized she had captured him as she truly saw him, imperfect, alive, real. It reminded her of the lesson she had learned through her encounter with Daniel. Life could offer distractions, temporary fascinations, but the real work, the real love, required attention, care, and presence. That night, Mark came into the studio, brushing his fingers through her hair gently. You've changed, he said softly. I've remembered who I am, she replied, leaning against him. And we're doing it together, he whispered. Amelia nodded. The awareness that she had almost lost herself and, possibly, her marriage was a humbling reminder. She had felt temptation, fascination, and the pull of something new. But in choosing to confront her own desires, reflect on them, and redirect them toward what truly mattered, she had reclaimed both herself and her marriage. Months later, she met Daniel once more at a photography exhibit. They exchanged polite greetings, shared a few thoughts about art, and smiled. There was no tension, no longing, just mutual respect. Amelia realized that some people are not meant to be part of your life forever, but they can teach lessons that last a lifetime. Daniel's role had been finite but significant. Amelia returned home that evening to Mark, who was making dinner with their youngest daughter, Sophie. She watched them laugh and cook together, feeling gratitude for the ordinary, everyday life she had once overlooked. She picked up her camera and took a candid photo, a snapshot of real life, unposed and genuine. Later, when she uploaded the photo to her computer, she noticed the way Mark's face glowed under the kitchen light, and she felt it loved patience, forgiveness, and presence. It was everything she had wanted and more. She realized that true intimacy wasn't about passion alone, but about choosing every day to be fully present with someone who mattered. Amelia's life had changed in small, deliberate ways. She had learned that excitement can awaken the heart, but it is commitment and attention that nurture it. She had felt the pull of temptation, the thrill of the unknown, and used it to understand herself better. And in doing so, she had strengthened her marriage, rediscovered joy in simple moments, and reclaimed her sense of self. One evening, as she placed her camera on the shelf and joined Mark and Sophie on the couch, Amelia thought back to that first night of dancing with Daniel. It hadn't been about him, exactly, it had been about her awakening. That brief encounter had reminded her of her own vitality, her capacity to feel, and her need to take responsibility for her happiness. Mark looked at her and smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're glowing," he said. Amelia returned his smile, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years. "I've remembered how to live," she whispered, and for the first time in a long while, she felt fully alive, fully present, and fully in love with the life she had chosen. Not the life she had escaped to. The lessons lingered quietly, like the soft echo of music in an empty room. Amelia had been tempted, stirred, awakened, but she had chosen herself, her marriage, and her own growth. And in that choice she found freedom, joy, and a love deeper than any fleeting thrill could ever provide.